Hello my friends and welcome to Fishtory. Today I want to talk about something that has happened to just about every aquarist who's kept fish for any amount of time. And that is, you walk in, you look at your aquarium, you turn the lights on, or maybe the lights just turned on, and you look at your tank, you get ready to feed your fish, and your heart sinks. Because 1, 2, 3, maybe all of your fish have passed away. And at that moment, you have no idea what has gone wrong. Now, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry. That is a tough experience, and it's a learning experience that we all go through as fish keepers. A lot of people want to give up at this moment. They feel like they spent months getting ready for their aquarium, or maybe they feel actually the opposite, like they didn't spend enough time getting ready for their aquarium. Maybe it's a single fish like a betta or a goldfish, and it wasn't in a proper environment and habitat for that fish's needs. Or maybe you did all the research in the world. It doesn't necessarily matter, because the pain and the frustration can be the same. It's in the story of Siddhartha that the idea that a prince who lives a completely sheltered life may find something as small as a pillow not being fluffed the most disconcerting and annoying and frustrating thing in his day. Whereas somebody who's working at the bottom of a coal mine may, break a finger, and that's not even in the top 5 worst things that happened that week. Everything is relative for how we react to these things. And in our hobby, it is so easy to internalize the work, the time, the energy, and the empathy and love that we put into our creatures. But not only our creatures, into ourselves. So every time you lose a piece of your aquarium, a piece of your habitat, a piece of the ecosystem that you are caring for, you are losing a little piece of something that every morning you got up and made sure you cared for it. Whether that's water changes once a week, water changes daily, never doing water changes, but you feed it baby brine shrimp and you hatch the baby brine shrimp. You go to the store, you research what's the best color enhancing food. You get just the right plants for that fish to have babies in, or to whatever extent you take the hobby. If you lose a fish that's just in your one and only tank, but that fish occupied a lot of your time, it was right there in your kitchen or in your living room or on a desk or something at work where you saw it day in and day out, and it was a comfort, it was a distraction, it was a little escape or a little sign of the beauty in the world and something outside of the place that is so man-made and human and defined that we so often find ourselves placing our aquariums. And it is the reminders of this, it is the time we put in, and it is the sudden almost lack of having that beauty, or the loss of that innocence or beauty of nature, of an animal, all of a sudden. And we know in a way that these fish relied on us. These fish were entrusted to us one way or the other. Cosmically, I'm saying. So, whether you got it handed to you and somebody said, here, just take this, I can't deal with this fish anymore, or whether you did all the research in the world, you paid top dollar for the fish, and you got it, one way or another, that fish did depend on you. First of all, I want to tell you, you're not alone. Every aquarist goes through this. What you need to do is take a time for yourself, whatever time that ends up being, that emotional time to just take a pause, take a breath. Ideally, of course, if you have fish that are still in danger or you don't know what occurred whatsoever, I do have videos on how you can diagnose that, or what I've done when I've literally walked in on a live stream and seen shrimp or fish dying, the entire tank or even 2 tanks of fish passing away. You can go watch those videos and see how I prioritize sort of a triage of the literal what do I do in the moment kind of thing. That's an easy enough thing to deal with. However, emotionally, it can be a lot more insidious. It can be a subtle kind of nagging feeling that this just isn't fun anymore, or I just don't want to go through it again. I let that creature down, or my attempt at the best for this fish was not good enough. And that can then be linked to all sorts of other aspects of your entire life, and you can start to feel kind of like it's a metaphor for the life, the world around you, for the things you care about, the things you've been entrusted to care for or be responsible for. it kind of becomes this symbol. And I think this is one reason beyond just the fact that you cared for the creature. Now, some of us will have the fortune of keeping fish that are individuals, fish that have personality, fish that have a name, and you keep them for years. They maybe have babies of their own, and their babies have babies, and maybe there's an entire network of their babies at your local fish club if you're anything like me. And in this case, you may have an angelfish. For me, it was Sergio, and later Goldie. I still have Goldie in the other room, but Sergio lived to a ripe old age. Angelfish, they can live like 10, 15, maybe even 20 years in captivity. However, for me, 7 was about as good as I could provide this guy. And for me, I felt so bad because I knew he was struggling at the end, and I could not for the life of me figure it out. So I want to tell you something that I said in an episode recently as well, which is sometimes, even if you're an expert, even if you knew everything about angelfish, everything about fish illness, fish get old, fish have heart attacks, fish have strokes, cancer, stress. I mean, there's just things that we don't necessarily think about in the list of, say, 20 or 30 ailments that almost any forum or message board is going to tell you that, did you check this? Did you check that? Was this high? Was that low? Did you feed? Did you do this? Whatever it may be, there's kind of a very limited amount of things that people will kind of pepper in a conversation online. And at the end of the day, it could be almost anything. And so the only thing you can do is learn from the situation. Be observant while you keep your fish. Be happy, be present while you're keeping your fish, while they're alive, while they're healthy, when your aquarium is flourishing. Take a video, take the water parameters when nothing is wrong with your tank. When your tank is doing its best, that is just as important as when your tank is doing its worst. Just like us and our own emotional health, it is so important to take stock of things when things are going right and to realize, what is it that's going right that I can do in my life in the future more of, versus when something's going wrong. It's very hard to pinpoint necessarily how to stop outside factors from impacting you, right? So a lot of life is going to be random and out of your control when it's an outside stressor or impact. But when it's something within you going well, or something you can pinpoint, I changed the temperature 2 degrees up and now my fish are more active, or I added an air stone and that oxygenated the surface of the water, which then oxygenated the whole tank, and that made them more lively with this species. These little things you notice is what makes fish keeping an incredible hobby, but it's also what makes it so hard when we lose the fish that taught us these things, that were along for the ride or the journey. And in fish keeping, we're surrounded by empathetic people who love animals. It's just the nature of people who like fish, people who like animals, reptiles, birds, cats, dogs, farm animals, exotic animals, you name it. We tend to love nature. We tend to love loving things. And when we lose them, it's hard. And that's obvious, but to a lot of people, losing a fish is something that they say, you should get over it. They're not very smart or whatnot. They don't realize that it's all relative. Maybe you didn't pick up your fish and hold it or hug it every day, but maybe you spent more hours in your day with that betta the last 2 or 3 years than you did with most of your friends. Maybe it is a reminder of something you've gone through in your own life and something that you reflect on that time in your life. So these fish become symbolic, but they also become a teaching mechanism for the future. And that's why when we fail or when something goes wrong, it's not so important always to know what went wrong at the end of the day. It's awesome if we can figure that out. But there are so many times in my life as a fish keeper over the last 30 years now where I just never know what went wrong. And I've lost quite a few fish at a time sometimes even. And even asking expert after expert of the people I know, which is a big network of experts, they don't know. They're scratching their head. And so that's why it's so important to take note of the good times and the healthy fish, and when things are going good, and when you see an aquarium that's doing the kinds of things that you are most excited about, whatever that might be, whether that's fish having babies and spawning, or whether that's fish coloring up and getting huge, living a long life, or whether that's just a diversity of your microbiome and your plants and, you know, little shrimp and seed shrimp and daphnia and little critters like that. There is no right or wrong way to stock an aquarium. Without these failings, without these moments of reflection, and without a little bit of pain and a little bit of guilt or perhaps regret, we don't grow. It's just like new muscle. It has to be stretched. It has to feel some pain, like this mosquito on my head, in my eye. You need to feel that pull, a little bit of tearing on a micro level, so that it can fill in and reinforce itself and get stronger, so that you'll have the strength and the endurance the next time it comes around. And the next time something like this goes on, maybe you will be able to prevent it. Maybe you will be able to notice when something's not at its optimal or at its peak. And you'll catch it long before things are going wrong in your aquarium and you walk in completely caught off guard. You'll catch it before anything is even serious. And those days you may never know. And that may be half the days as a fish keeper if you have a lot of fish and a lot of little ecosystems. But it is those things that we never know about and we avoided that are really the major wins. And we need to remember all of that. And you also need to remember that when people say it's just a fish, it's not a cat or a dog, you know, again, it's all relative, and it almost makes it harder that we don't have that ability in our society to say, yeah, I had this fish for 10 years, or I had this fish and I got it when I broke up with my ex-husband or my boyfriend, or, you know, whatever it may be. And there's a story there, there's a connection, and there's human growth that occurred within you. And it's just like if you lost a wedding ring or something else symbolic, people wouldn't scoff at that. And it doesn't need to be as serious as a wedding ring symbolically. But if you think about it on that level, people wouldn't think that's trivial. So just remember that if you have someone who's a friend in the aquarium club as well, or in the community here on Facebook, let's be kind and let's be gentle to people who are grieving, even if it seems minimal to you, even if it's a guppy or, you know, some sort of creature that to you is no big deal. It's a quote unquote feeder fish. To someone else, it could signify a whole journey. It could signify sobriety, anxiety, overcoming who knows what. And we should respect that and celebrate all of that beauty that's packed in to our aquariums and our minds and this hobby as a community. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, you can always click the thumbs up button, subscribe, hang out, and we do 2 live streams a week, usually at 4:30 or 5 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 to 8 East Coast time, and Tuesdays and Fridays, we're always hanging out, trying to answer your questions, showing you whatever's new in the hobby. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.